Good afternoon. Today we're going to be talking about the tenant side rental process and how to help people in terms of finding an apartment. Now, one of the most important things to think about is, really what is your job as a rental agent in helping a tenant find an apartment, right? Given changes in the law, and the Fair Act and things like that, people can find apartments on their own. And so what we're really here to help them do is to save time and money, right? As an agent, that's really what we do in most circumstances, be it someone buying a house, selling a house, renting a house, or, renting their apartment. It's to help them save time and money, right? And for people that are unfamiliar with the process, many of them are very open to paying us a fee for helping them do that. And for me, you're going to save yourself time and money by following these steps kind of in the order that I'm describing them and by going over all the information with people before you start to take them out, right? That's going to save you time and money because you're only going to be working with people who have signed an agreement saying that they're going to pay you and what your services are. And just one reminder, if you want to get a rental deal done, make sure to use our team if you're not available, right? Someone who's looking to rent something is usually on a fairly short timeline. And if you can't go out when they want to go out, let us know. We can find another agent to help you, because we have people who can show right away in different neighborhoods and things like that. And it's really, I think, in my opinion, going to help you to get more deals done. And it's better to make half of something than 100% of nothing. It's kind of one of my sayings. So just to kind of go back to basics, there are three different kind of classes, and there's some subclasses here, but there are three different types of buildings in New York, and all of them will have rentals in them or could have rentals in them. The first is a rental building, right? And that's where the building is fully owned by a person, a family, a management company, whatever it is, and all of the units in the building are a rental. The next one is a condo, right? People who own condos often rent them out. So you can find people who are looking to rent out a condo unit and bring your customer to actually rent that. And cooperatives or co-ops also have rental units in them, right? Sometimes these are what are called sponsor units, where the person who owned the previous rental building still rents out units. There might have been a rent stabilizer, rent control tenant in place. Other times, people will do a co-op sublet where they're renting their individual unit. Some buildings allow that to happen after you live there for a year or two. Some allow it to happen for a year or two over the entire life of your ownership of the building. Some don't allow them. So again, those are important things to think about when you're putting someone in a condo, or sorry, in a co-op. The other thing is that, just to remember about timelines, right? Most rental buildings can be approved and you can move in within a day or two. Most condos and co-ops have a rental approval process, and that can take longer, right? For a condo, it can take 2 to 3 weeks. For a co-op, it can take a month or more. And so again, if you're showing people in a condo or co-op building and your customer needs to move quickly, make sure that you're asking people kind of what's going on and things like that. Now, in New York, there are a few different types of listings, right? There's an exclusive listing, where one agent or one firm has the right to advertise the property and find a tenant, and they have a signed exclusive agreement with that owner. Again, as a reminder, with the Fair Act, if you are advertising an apartment on any website, it is with the extreme and intent that you are being compensated only by the owner of the property, right? So again, you are not able to advertise something on any public-facing website if you are not being compensated by someone. There are limited listings. There are a number of different management companies where the buildings are, again, paying those brokers a fee for bringing a tenant, but not everyone. And then there are what we used to call open listing rentals, where these are ones that we now kind of call OP listings, where you are getting paid by the owner, right? And again, the owner says, hey, I'll pay any broker who brings someone a fee for bringing someone in. And those are things where you can bring the tenant in and actually collect from the owner versus collecting from the tenant themselves. Okay, so again, OP we just talked about. OP stands for owner pays, right? Any exclusive that you have is an owner pays at this point for you, right? Because you are being paid by the owner. period, right? The Fair Act changed all that. There are also buildings where you might not be representing the owner. In the case of some of the larger management companies, and again, we'll talk about this with the e-blast and things like that, but there are many management companies that will pay Weichert a fee if they bring a tenant to rent the apartment. Free rent, right? Again, you'll oftentimes see where someone's advertising free rent, right? And that means that the prospective tenant for the apartment will receive some amount of rent for free over the course of their lease, right? Many times this is phrased as, 1 month free on a 12 or 13-month rental. Sometimes it's 2 months on a 24-month rental, whatever it is, right? The thing to remember is that you need to talk to the listing agent or the management company or the owner about how that rent is applied, right? Again, that kind of brings us into net effective rent. So, in the case of getting a free month of rent, some owners will say, again, 12th month free on a 12-month lease, right? That means that the person is paying a higher rent for the first 11 months and nothing in month 12. It does not mean that you can basically divide the 12-month rent by 11 and that's what they're going to be paying every month. That case would be what we'd call a net effective rent, where they'd actually be paying less every month. But most buildings and most owners give some month for free where they actually don't pay rent for that month. You'll also see a couple other terminology, flex or no flex, right? That's usually the case of a studio, a 1 bedroom, a 2 bedroom, where another wall can be added to create some sort of additional living space. Some buildings allow for flex walls, others do not, right? And so it's very important to remember that you're checking that, right? Sometimes you'll get a customer that says, oh, we're looking for a flex two, right? That means that they're okay not having a living room or a living room with a window, but that doesn't mean that every building will allow that. Shares is when you have two unrelated people or two or more unrelated people using an apartment together, right? Or roommates. It's another way of posing that. Some buildings allow it, some don't. So again, anytime you have one of those situations, you want to be very clear when you're reaching out to the management company or the listing agent what your situation is. The same thing is with a guarantor, right? A guarantor is someone who co-signs a lease for someone. Oftentimes it's, someone who doesn't have sufficient credit history, maybe someone who is a recent college graduate or just new to a job where they're going to have someone else co-sign. There are different types of guarantors. There are personal guarantors, like a family member or a friend who are co-signing. And there are also third-party guarantor companies like Rhino, Insurance, and the guarantors, where your customer can pay a fee to have them act as a guarantor, right? Again, if you know that your customer is using one of these services or needs a guarantor, always be very upfront when you're putting in requests for showings. That way, you'll make sure that you're actually showing them places and finding them places that will actually take it, right? Some buildings require the guarantor to live in the state of New York and be an owner. Some require them in the tri-state area, right? New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Some don't really care where they are as long as they're in the United States, right? So again, asking these questions and finding out things at the beginning will really save you time, energy, and effort in terms of what you're actually showing people. The worst thing you can do is show someone an apartment they love, they apply for it, and then you find out because you didn't ask the right question, they can't actually have it. Okay, so how do we do this and how do we kind of keep as much information together as we can? So the first is to always do a rental consultation with someone when you have someone who's reaching out to you to say, hey, I'm looking for an apartment. Can you help me? Right? This can be virtual over Zoom or it can be done over the phone if it can't be done in person. One thing that I found that keeps everything easy is to make sure that all decision makers are included, right? If you're talking to two roommates, you want them both to be included in all communication. If you're talking to three roommates, the same thing. If there are parents who are co-signing or guarantors that are being used, make sure they understand the process, right? And so get them onto this consultation. What the consultation should go over is the process of working with you, right? What the required documentation is, and for them to, at the end, sign all the required forms, right? And I want these forms to be signed before you take someone out, right? This keeps you compliant with the Fair Act, right? And so what we need to have you sign is the 4 disclosure forms that you need to sign no matter who you're representing, as well as a tenant registration fee agreement or tenant agreement. So again, we'll go over those forms later on. So you need the tenant registration fee agreement or tenant agreement, the disclosure form, the fair housing disclosure, the RESPA notice, and the wire fraud notice, right? Those last four are required no matter who you're representing, right? And the first one is the one that's specific for you working with a potential tenant. So when we talk about the process of working with a broker, right, or an agent, whatever you want to call yourself, the first question I always ask is, have you rented in New York City before? Right? And if so, have you worked with a broker? And if they say no, or if they say yes, I do the same thing. I explain my role and the fee, right? So again, what do I say? I say most properties have a brokerage fee, which is paid by the tenant. We charge 1 month for our services, right? If they say, oh, I don't want to pay a month, then is that a good customer to be working with? Potentially no, right? Again, and if they say, I don't want to pay a fee, I say, I totally understand. Um, it's a lot of money. I can start by seeing if there are any options with the owners paying the commission, but there aren't many in this market, which is the case. And then I say again, would a 1 month fee be okay? Right? So the other questions that you want to find out are when is your current lease up or when do you have to move in and why are you moving, right? These two questions really, I think, help you figure out how much time, energy, and effort to devote to someone and really what to prioritize, right? We're moving because our kitchen's too small. We're moving because I'm with roommates and we're all moving out, right? Whatever that is important for you to know. And again, a lot of times people forget to ask that question or ask when is your current lease up? Because we then can backtrack from there to figure out the timeline that we have to find something, right? If they say, oh, my lease is up in 2 weeks, I have to move by then, we would probably not show them any co-op or condo units, right? Because the approval process could take too long, right? If they say, oh, I'm moving because my apartment's too noisy, right? We might want to avoid certain blocks, right? Because of things like that, right? Oh, I can't stand the noise coming from the jazz club next door to me, right? Well, then we probably would want to avoid apartments where there's a bar downstairs, right? Again, just things to think about. Now, another apartment that I think is really important is to ask them, what apartments have you already seen, right? Why do you like them or why don't you like them, right? And the other question is, are you working with other brokers or going out on your own, right? And again, the good thing is that now with the FAIR Act, they're going to sign an agreement saying they're only going to be working with us when they sign it, right? So again, if they say, yeah, I'm working with tons of brokers, they're probably not going to want to sign the form that we need them to sign. And so it's probably potentially not worth your time, right? And again, if for whatever reason you're okay with them working with other people and you sign a non-exclusive agreement, which I don't recommend, you have to tell them, please keep me updated on what you see and what you like and don't like, right? That's just to save you time, energy, and effort. But for me, if someone says, oh no, I'm going to work with whoever I can, it's not a good customer, don't waste time on it.
Yeah.
That's how I feel, right? You might feel differently depending on the time that you have available, but again, just something to keep in mind. So one thing that we also want to go over with them is what documentation they're going to need to provide when they find the place that they need, and what the requirements are for most landlords, right? And again, you always want to defer to the landlord's agent or the landlord for their application and the guidelines that they use, right? Most people have kind of all of that put together. And so what you can do is you can really ask them kind of what's going on and what they're going to need. But kind of typical, or what I would consider typical, is that most landlords require the tenant to make 40 times the monthly rent to qualify for an apartment. For a $2,000 apartment, that landlord wants to see $80,000 in income on their tax returns, their offer letter, whatever it is, their employment letter, and things like that, right? Again, there are different situations, right? People who have different programs, people who have a guarantor. Again, there's different requirements and things like that. But what you always want to do, again, is defer to the listing agent for all of that. So you'll also defer to them for their application. Most people ask for an employment letter that should be on company letterhead with salary, position, length of employment, any bonuses, and that usually needs to be a signed letter. 2 to 3 pay stubs. Again, most people use direct deposit. They can pull them from their ADP or other payment portal account. Tax returns, usually the last 2 years, and that's especially asked for if they're self-employed. 2 to 3 most recent bank statements or asset statements, investment statements, a copy of their ID, and a copy, and an application or credit check fee. As a reminder, if it's a rental building, the maximum that they can ask for a credit or background check is $20 per person. If it's a condo or co-op, they can ask for a lot more. So after going over this, I always follow up. Again, I do this on a phone call or a Zoom. I then follow up by putting all this into an email and sending it to them right away, right? Dear Joe, I just want to send over the list of documents most landlords use, as well as a sample of our company rental application attached. I ask that you complete the packet so I have it put together as a PDF that we can give to any agent. Most other agents will ask me for a general financial picture as well, so we ask for this up front, right? List everything. The brokerage fee varies from apartment to apartment, but it is 1 month for our assistance in finding a rental. Landlords will require first month's rent, security deposit, and brokerage fee at lease signing. These will have to be certified checks, and I put in parentheses the big checks that you get directly from the teller at the bank or wire transfer, but rent can usually be paid by personal check or direct deposit after you move in, right? And that's to do a couple things, right? It's to, again, reiterate the fact that there is a fee for using you and what it is, to reiterate the fact that they need to get these documents together. And again, it's in your best interest to save you time and energy to have it together, right? The worst thing that can happen in a competitive rental market is that you find a place they love and they don't have their stuff together, so you can't apply. You look so much better if you see a place and you immediately text the management company, hey, here's our application, boom.
Ready to move forward.
Ready to move forward.
Right.
So again, you really want to get all this together in advance. So you went over everything with them. They agreed to the fee. They signed those 5 documents. Now find an apartment, right? So how do we find an apartment? Use the criteria they gave you to set up showings. You can look in OLR and on LIBOR through OneKey. Again, based on what they're looking for, size, location, amenities, pets, right? Brokers will usually ask for info on your clients. You can give it to them, right? That's totally fine. It's fine to ask, right? Obviously, if they're asking discriminatory things, let us know, but usually they're pretty good. Rental brokers can be pretty flaky. Let's change that, right? Send them the listings through OLR and OneKey if at all possible. And don't send a million options, right? If you send them everything that's on the market, you're not really doing your job because your job is to listen to what they want and help save time. If they're going through a million options, whatever, and again, in most markets, there aren't a million options, but I would rather send a couple options and set up a time to see them and go over it with them and meet them. And again, in this fast-paced market, you can lose time between finding a place and sending it and getting it in. What I often do in this market is say, listen, I'm going to set, when are you available to go out, right? I'm going to set up appointments. Let's go see some stuff if you haven't seen anything, and we'll go from there. I can tell you this happened to me. I had a friend of my husband. He was looking, she and her family were looking for a place. There was a perfect place. I knew it was going to be good for her.
Right.
She's like, no, I don't want to see it, right? What did I do? I set the appointment anyways, and I got the keys, and we went and saw it, and she took that apartment.
Oh, nice.
So it's going to happen, right? The other thing you can do to help save you time and energy down the road is, especially after you get to know your customer, ask for the application before you go see it if you think it's the one for them. That way you already know exactly what you need. You have all the documents together and they can apply on the spot if they like the place, right? There are a lot of management companies that will take the first application they get. So if you have everything ready, great, right? The other thing, which again, I don't put this in the slides, but if they do find something that they like, the only out of pocket is the $20 application fee. They might as well apply for it, right? It can be the difference between getting something and not, right? So again, you can find stuff on OLR, StreetEasy, Zillow, Realtor, Apartments.com, RentHop, LIBOR, Zillow, Realtor, Apartments if it's outside of the city. Again, confirm with your customer, confirm with the management or broker. Be a couple minutes early, right? The worst thing you can do is have them go in without you and then you miss it and they get a connection with the other person or whatever. Don't talk too much, right? Again, I found that one of the best things you can do is let them absorb it and let them react to it, right? If they want your opinion, they will ask you, right? Know the answer to common questions, right? Where's the closest subway? Where's the closest city bike? Where's the closest bus line? Grocery store? What other amenities are nearby, right? Get their reaction. And after every showing that I do, like later that day or the next morning at the latest, I send an email thanking whoever showed me, right? No brokers do that. But if you do that, you'll start getting into a good relationship, right? And thank them for the showing. So what I usually say is, dear Keisha, thank you so much for showing 123 Main Street to my client George. Unfortunately, the kitchen was too small for him, but I'll keep it in mind for other customers.
Okay.
That's all you have to send. And that's going to make you seem like a better agent than someone who just doesn't do it. And again, it gives finality to things, right? Or if they're thinking about it, he really likes it. Keep us updated if you get any applications because he's potentially interested. We're seeing more things tomorrow, right? Whatever it is. So again, always defer to the listing agent for the application requirements. And again, I like to ask for them before taking them out. You can have a little stash of them if there's a certain management company you're showing a lot of stuff with. You already have the packet together, send it over. Usually credit checks are run by the listing agent or management, right? If they need a credit check done by us, we collect $20 and need our application package completed to run it. And Patty can run it Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. We get it back pretty quickly. Again, just let me know if you need help with that. So again, they get approved. Great. Congratulations. Leases are prepared by the listing agent or the management company, right? You really should just look at the first page and maybe a couple of the other things just to confirm the terms are correct, right? It is what they said it is, right? For instance, right? We're not lawyers. We're not supposed to be reading legal documents, right? If there's something like a free month's rent, make sure that that's in there somewhere, right? Or ask the listing agent or management company, hey, we just want to confirm where's the free rent in this lease? Where's the free rent in this package? Again, all fees are paid at the lease signing, including the brokerage fee, right? Checks to Weichert are made payable to Weichert Properties. And again, those must be bank certified checks. We do not accept any personal checks, period, right? They can also be money orders if you need to. That's totally fine. So again, you're done with the process. They've rented. Congratulations. You're going to submit the paperwork and payment details through SkySlope, right? Again, you should already have all the documentation in the system from when you signed those 5 forms. You then put it in as a transaction, put in all the details. If everything is submitted before 10 o'clock, it'll be processed that day, if not the next day. And you should be paid within 1 week of dropping off the check. It usually happens way faster than that, right? We basically tell you it's within a week. Most of the time, it's within 2 to 3 days. But again, I don't want to guarantee that. If it's an owner pays apartment where the owner is paying our fee, you need to submit a W-9 and an invoice for processing and payment, right? We are usually paid 30 days after the customer moves in, but it sometimes takes longer for everything to be processed, right? And again, we'll help you through those OP processes and things like that. Just let me know and we'll make sure that everything's in there. So again, another step that tends to be forgotten, especially by rental agents, is that that person that you've just completed a rental for is one of your best sources of referrals for rental sales and any business going forward, right? So after the leases are signed, the tenant usually coordinates with the management company, owner, listing agent for most things, but you want to keep following up with them. How did the move go? Right? Again, if they're moving in a couple weeks, do you need a recommendation for a mover? Let me help you with someone, right? Use my Weichert for your client management and put reminders in your calendar, right? The great thing is on a rental application, it's going to have a lot of stuff. Their birthday, right? Do you have all your customers' birthdays in your phone? If not, start adding them in. You can also add it into my Weichert to remind you a second way, right? But I have them in my phone. Reach out to them 6 months after they move in. How are things with the apartment, right? Because again, people at that point start thinking about what they're doing next, right? Again, that's one of the great things about New York City and working in real estate. People move a lot, right? People move a lot. And so if you're following up with them, staying on top of them, reaching out to them, staying connected with them, it's a great thing. Put in 3 months before the end and their rental anniversary, just in case they renew. Hey, you've been there a year. Congratulations, right? Hopefully you've already reached out to them 6 months, 3 months, and at their anniversary, right? Get them a small moving gift, right? Again, a lot of people forget this for rentals. Even if it's just a $25 Starbucks gift card, think about something they like, a keychain, whatever it is. And again, you can always ask for a review from them, even if they've only helped you with renting, right? On Google, on Zillow, on RentHop. And again, remember, these are going to be your best sources of referral going forward. So that's the rental process, right? Again, we'll be going over more of these workshops, but this is what we have now. So thank you.